next news as well. More than 14 million people, including over 4.5 million young children, could die because of drastic U.S. foreign aid cuts under President Trump's administration. That's the alarming warning from new research published in The Lancet today, as world leaders gather in Spain for urgent talks on saving global aid programs. The study says the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, which once funded over 40% of global humanitarian work, has been slashed by over 80%. Health experts say the funding loss could trigger a crisis on the scale of a pandemic or even a major war. Until this year, USAID provided more than 40% of all humanitarian funding globally. A study looking back at data from 133 countries found that USAID funding prevented more than 91 million deaths between 2001 and 2021. But now the Trump administration says these cuts are needed to remove wasteful spending. The cuts have also triggered other major donors, including Germany, the United Kingdom, and France, to announce reductions in their aid budgets. Millions of families who rely on this aid now fear losing basic health care and food supplies. Humanitarian groups are calling on rich countries to protect these life-saving funds. As funding dries up, the world is watching to see who, if anyone, will step in to fill the gap. Now we go back to our guest, Ross Feingold. He's a political analyst joining us live from Taipei for this discussion. Ross, thank you for staying with us. Now, is the Trump administration right to call this spending wasteful, or does this research show that cutting aid could cost far more in the long run? Do these dramatic cuts to U.S. foreign aid risk creating a humanitarian catastrophe?
It's probably both. I think it's fair to say that there is a lot of bureaucratic and wasteful activities that occur within the international aid space. I think the aid providers would acknowledge that as well, or the NGOs that are involved. I think the United Nations would acknowledge that. The World Health Organization would acknowledge that. And yes, it's highly likely that reductions in U.S. Foreign aid and humanitarian aid are going to result in worse health outcomes, people starving in areas where there's famines, and other negative outcomes. But we have to deal with the reality. And the reality is President Trump has decided on this policy, and that's just the way it's going to be for the next 3.5 years. Maybe a future U.S. president will resume a larger amount of foreign aid, but it's not going to happen under the Trump administration. So during this period, it's really going to be up to other wealthy countries to step in and fill the gap. That could be countries in Europe. It could be countries in the Middle East, which are very wealthy. It could also be China as well. China certainly has shown its willingness over the past 20 years or so to use its soft power, especially in places like Africa.
Thank you, Ross. You will stay with us as we move on to our next news.